So welcome everybody. I'm going to get started now. I think you should put, if you're in the back, so put on the headphones. So my name is Daniel. I work for a company called Outtakes, a London-based company. And today I'm going to talk about the real world of stacking containers in production. This picture I took in Rotterdam. So I'm a Dutch guy. But if you go to Rotterdam to the Heiplaat, you find a sculpture. And this is how I feel sometimes working with containers. And a lot of time I really love containers, but sometimes it's like, oh, why doesn't it not work? Or, you know, what's happening with the networking and all that stuff. And today in this presentation, I'll help you a little bit navigating through all those troubles. So I work for a company called Outtakes. We develop a platform to deploy containers in production. And I'm a developer advocate. And on your left side, yeah, my right side, you can see that I'm about 60–70% of my time, I'm an engineer working on our platform, trying to weld all those containers together, create this nice platform running containers. On the other side, this side, your right side, my left hand, is that I'm thinking about, okay, talking to customers, talking to you guys, how you use containers in production, and what can we learn from the ecosystem, but also all the use cases you guys need to run containers in production, and bring that knowledge back to our platform. So that's me, a little bit of thinking, and sometimes I'm thinking about that sculpture, like, oh, how are we going to solve this problem? So today, I'm going to talk about a hero. Does everybody know who this guy is? Who doesn't know who this guy is? Don't be shy. Okay, perfect. One. So, in this movie world, a lot of movies has a hero in it. And for Lord of the Rings, we have Frodo. And there's a lot of other movies where you have the hero who becomes the hero doing this talk. So, Frodo, basically his task is this. He found his magic ring, and he's bringing it to Mount Doom. That's basically his task, right, in the whole movie. But it's not that easy that as Frodo can walk to that volcano and put in that ring, right? So he needs to find allies, ups and downs, fighting wars, all that stuff. And it's the same a little bit with technology. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about the hero's quest. The hero's quest is basically a design pattern used primarily in movies, how you can create a hero in movies, but you can also apply it to transformation in your company or even for personal development. There are a couple of students from the HKU in Utrecht who created a 2-minute video about the hero's journey. Because I can talk about the hero's journey, and I need at least 50 minutes to talk about what it is, but this nice animation will show you in 2 minutes the hero's journey. So, enjoy.
This is the Hollywood guidebook for heroes. You will learn the secret truth behind most blockbuster movies. They basically all follow the same 12 steps, also known as the hero's journey. Every hero's story starts off with some sort of nobody living in an ordinary world. But by following the White Rabbit, he will get the call to adventure. At first, he can't be too eager. He must refuse the call. Running away from his destiny, he will stumble upon a mysterious old guy who will turn out to be his mentor. Now he's ready to cross the threshold. Where he's going, he doesn't need roads. Of course, he will be tested, and he might need to win the game to gain new allies and enemies. He must overcome his fear by entering the inmost cave. Here, he will face his supreme ordeal, which will change his life forever. After defeating some bad guy, he'll receive his well-deserved reward. And because he can, he will be flying the road back. But before realizing there's no place like home, our apprentice must resurrect as a new person. Eventually, our hero will return to where he started, but things will never be the same again. This is what we call the hero's journey.
So that's the hero's journey. And I'm going to transform a little bit. I'm going to, use that hero's journey in the hero's container transformation journey. And basically, this is what's happening. So we're going to apply this into our world. On top, you have the ordinary IT world. On the bottom, the very special container world. And basically, if you go through all these stages in a hero's journey, there's 4 stages. Understanding technology, learning the technology, using the technology, and of course, implementing the technology in your company. Let's get started. So the first thing is understanding. So we're in this ordinary IT world, right? So you're probably doing Scrum, putting posters on the wall, doing Agile, all that stuff. That's your ordinary IT world. Maybe you don't use containers at this point, but you're like, okay, maybe I want to use containers. So there's this call to adventure. Maybe you go to a conference like this, you see this guy on stage, this Dutch guy telling you that containers is the shit. You go to your company, say to your coach, yeah, I know this thing. It's containers, we have to use it. It's the call to adventure. Or maybe your manager is calling you up or go into your office saying, hey, I know this thing about containers. This is going to, change everything. We need to use this. That's the call to adventure. And in the hero's journey, there's always the refusal of the call. It's always like, yeah, but we already can deploy every day. We can roll out our infrastructure today already. We don't need containers. Maybe we're already happy with releasing every 3 months or something. I don't know. But there is always a refusal call, and that's basically how human beings are. Change is difficult, and so sometimes you need somebody who pushes you in the right direction, right? So that's in the hero's journey, it's called meeting the mentor. Somebody who's saying, well, it's okay, because containers can solve those problems for you. You can maybe deploy faster, develop faster, work together on this container, all that stuff. So that's meeting the mentor. But before I'm going to do this, where is my... Sorry, yeah, here it is. So, before you can understand why you should use containers, I was thinking, how can I explain this? So I come up with this artichoke. So I believe that everybody is an artichoke. And the nice thing, if you know the vegetable, the sweet stuff of an artichoke is the heart. But there are lots of leaves around it. So this is the Artichoke model. So if you're a developer, you're an Artichoke developer, and a lot of things around the developer, like tools. You like tools. Maybe you have a nice MacBook Pro. You like design patterns, GitHub. Of course, you have like lots of monitors to show all the code. But at the heart, you just want to build the right, elegant, performant code, right? As a developer, you just want to create code. So that's the heart of your Artichoke. Of course, we have the operations people. And so operations people probably love networks, routers, hardware, programmable infrastructure, monitoring, lots of monitors to just see if everything goes okay. But in the end, an operations guy wants to deploy the code in a controlled manner and keep it performant and stable. You just want to, sleep at night. So in the middle, we have the heart. So we all want to, deploy the right service for our customers. Of course, don't forget the business. Just wrote it down because I'm not really a business guy, but things like intelligence, return of investment, cost-saving metrics, adding value, all this buzz, all little, leaves around at heart. But in the end, you just want to run and give the right service to the customers and make a profit. And of course, don't forget the people, your customers. They want to use your service. They just want to, rely on your service 24/7. And I think in the middle, you see this heart. And of course, a lot of things like UI, UX designers all, want to work on this piece of software. And I think containers can help you with this. So let's cross this threshold. So in this hero's journey, you're going to, step from your safe, ordinary IT world in this very special container world. This is the moment where you can say, okay, let's get going with those containers. Get the first 101 tutorial and just start hacking away. Just a reminder, I get a lot of questions. So what's the difference between a virtual machine and a container? This is my definition. I think virtual machines are isolated operation system and its resources it uses. And containers are isolated process and resources it can use. I found a nice video. So this is basically containers. So containers isolate the process, and you see these little kittens, they're animating. The thing was, when I found this little video, the cats were jumping from one container to the other one. That's not what you want, right? So you want to have like isolated processes. So you can see a lot of different cats here, and we can give them names. So we have PHP, RabbitMQ, we have all this technology working together. And so I already bring my own container here, so I'm going to demonstrate how that works. So how does this work? So we have very clever kernel stuff like namespaces. It's Linux for the win, right? So that's where you run your isolated process. And basically at this moment, the Docker file is the dominant language to tell how to run your isolated process. So what you basically do is from base, so you start with a root system, and then you run some updates, set up your development or your environment, copy your source code, do some creation of maybe an artifact, some cleanups, and of course run your code. And this process is what I called the containerization machine. And the containerization machine is basically taking your code, so it goes in the top, goes to your containerization and creates these nice little containers, images. And what I think is really important to succeed with containers in your company is make this containerization machine works. So I'm going to give a little demonstration here. So I've got this container. There's no cat inside, so just draw a cat there. Let's get some things out. So I've got some t-shirts that you can grab in the end. Just get this thing out. So let's say we have this our cat service, right? So this cat service will serve cats for us, for our customers. And the nice thing with containers, you can put everything inside what you want. So let's say, so we start with a base, and then we add some code, some libraries, some extra code. Maybe we install something. So that's going to happen sometimes when you develop, right? Something breaks, and we're just building our all the things we need to run the process. Maybe you put the big elephant in the room, your technical debt. You just all put it inside your container like this. Maybe you think containers are VM, so you put a lot of fluff inside, which you probably don't need. So we just put this thing also inside our containers. And maybe you want some security, so maybe a little fence there. And then we have our, base. We just, let's get some tape here, like this. So I'm just creating a nice container here. This is me, Daniel, the developer, and I just give this to my operations guy and say, just run this thing in production. And the operations guy says, oh, that's nice, this is a cat service, we can run this thing in production. But you can see there's nothing real of an interaction between the developer and operations guy. So that's what we're going to look at. So this is our container, just leave it there for there. So we're crossing the threshold, so we're going to start learning how to, do the containerization. So in the hero's journey, you find some allies, you find some enemies. This is where you, find out how this will fit in your company. One of the things is this. I didn't have time to create a slim image, so I created a fat one instead. So shortcuts are evil. It's really easy when you have like a process. You say, okay, I just, take this Ubuntu base image, install all the packages, and then install my code, and then I've got a container. Yes, that works. But still, you have things you probably don't need. I think less is more. Let's look at this containerization machine again. So we're going to look at the containerization machine again. So we put in some code, maybe a little bit of shit, the big elephant. We're just, creating a nice container again. So this is what we created. And basically, it's shit which looks nice, right? So if you have this thing, and run that in production, you probably end up like this. You can't polish a third. So it's really important what you put inside your container. So I have this thing called Kiss to Get It Right. So I have 5 little guidelines to make your life easier. So I'm going to open up this guy again. So first of all, the first step is make it slim. What I mean with slim is just remove everything from your image you don't need. So let's see, okay, this is probably code I need. But all the fluff, all the packages you probably need in development, but not in production, you have to remove it. Just remove that stuff, right? So that's slim. So we start with a basic image. Security is, of course, important, so you have to make sure that you pull the latest updates, don't pull your... so that's it. And also, if you look at your code, probably half you don't need. So we end up with this nice piece of code. So we put that inside. And it's secure because we only pull the libraries we need, and also speedy. So, and this is really important. So when you're working with containers in your company, and you have people have to run these things in production, your operations guy, you have to work together. Together, you have to look inside and see, okay, so this nice cat service, if it's on the load, it probably use 5 gigabytes of memory, or it's, maybe we can change this. How are we going to keep this up and running in production? So it's really important to also know how this performs in production. And as a developer, you probably, maybe you are, but maybe you're not, are familiar how things behave in production. So it's really important to talk to the operation guys how we're going to build this cat service. Also, stability. So when you are pulling from a base image, and you can say for instance, Alpine latest, you probably are getting the latest. So the versions are not locked. That means when I create this container, as a developer container maybe, and give it to I'm not giving the container of the image, but I give just the code to create that container, that probably end up in a different container, because latest it can change in 5 minutes. And also sets. So it's really tempting to do a lot of weird stuff on your local machine, mounting volumes, all that stuff. In production, you probably have a cluster with different volumes. It's much harder to maintain. So this is what I want to say, is that keep your images small and secure. Oh, wait. Okay, let's go. So now we're halfway to a very special container world. And so we know that we have to create a slim image, work together with all the people in the company. But now what? So we understand how things are working with containers. So let's do a little bit of reality check. So at Cloud66, we run about between 7,000 and 10,000 servers each day, and about 1,000 people are using our containers in production, and I always look how they use containers. So this is a little bit of a data set I subtracted a month ago about how people are using containers. So right now, about 40% are just doing monolith containerization. That means that they just put the monolith inside a container and just run it on the platform. I don't say it's a bad thing. I think it's part of the learning curve. Lots of people don't have this luxury to go straight to microservices or split up the monolith. So you see a lot of people just putting a monolith in a container and then scale up the container. About 30% you see that they split the front end and have a back end as an API, so API first approach. So you see like multiple containers, probably one container for the front end, one container for the API, and one for some workers, and of course the database. About 20%, this is really interesting, because if I look at lots of our customers, you can see that they're splitting up the monolith. Every time, every month, you see a little new container or new image coming, adding to the system. They're really, adding new services to their platform. And about, I think, 10% are now doing, full microservice architectures. At this point, you start wondering, okay, so I have this thing running on my local box, maybe in a testing environment. It's time to deploy it in production. And you need a reward. You need to understand that when you run things in production, you need something to support this. So I create this picture, and I think your container needs a lot of things. It's not only, I mean, running a container is one thing, but keeping it alive in production is another thing. These are the components you need to maintain your container and have it run stable in production. So you have to think about security. Not only security of your container, but also the security of your cluster. All those things your operations guys have to do. Also data management. There's a lot of... the ecosystem is evolving quickly. So right now I'm still saying that it's not wise to run your databases inside containers. So I think it's still good to have your databases not running containers. But there's still lots of new technology coming by to solve that problem. Also, orchestration. So how can you scale up your cluster? How can you add more servers? How can you scale your system? Life cycle, and this is really important. So probably a lot of people have maybe a Jenkins CI/CD something in place, but you need to think about how can I, work on this cat service on my local machine, and how can I get it through my testing pipeline all the way to production. So how does that work with your platform? Discovery. So if you remind me that little animation of those cats, I mean, the cats are isolated. They're isolated by the network, but they have to find each other. So it's really important, how can they discover each other? Right now, the most discovery is DNS-based discovery, which is really easy, so you don't need extra coding to find the other services. Monitoring, especially when you have lots of containers running, it's really important that those containers can find each other. It's really important that every container logs on the same way, that you can aggregate those logs and find out what's going on inside your platform. And of course, scaling and scheduling. Scheduling is a really important thing right now because not only it's easy to bring in your code inside containers, do like polyglot development, which I really like because I like to develop in different languages, and with containers it's really easy to deploy a system service in Go, maybe a web thing in Ruby on Rails, and just have them work together in one system. And of course, your scheduling is really important to just saying, okay, so this guy needs more capacity, just I scale up the numbers. Or if it's really not busy in the weekend of something, I want to scale down and maybe shut down some service. Also, make sure that you don't overspend on resources. So we go to the road back. So you explored this very special container world, and you understand how to create images. You have to understand what you need from a platform, and now you basically stepping back in your ordinary IT world to bring in the containers. And what I'm saying with Headspace, during this journey, you will see there's a lot of things changing. The ecosystem, Docker started 4 years ago, making containers popular. It's just 4 years old. I mean, container technology was already there before Docker came around, but now it's mainstream. But still, a lot of things are changing. And before you know it, you're like, okay, so I need to build my containers on my local machine. I need some image repository. I need security. I need monitoring. I need this tool. I need this tool. Before you know it, you're going to explode. So it's really good to understand what your company or what you want to achieve with containers, and just get rid of all that shit which you don't need. The same with that container. The same with this container. You don't need all the things you probably need. So what I'm saying is it's really good to choose wisely how you're going to build your system to deploy your containers. Are you going to do like a bespoke thing inside your company? Are you going to do it as a containers as a service? Maybe you're going to install your own Kubernetes cluster. So choose wisely what you need for your workload. So then in the zero request, that is when you're going to integrate inside your ordinary IT world. So we live in the ordinary IT world. You went to the very special container world. You know, okay, we know containers, and now it's the time you can say to your coworker, okay, this is great. We're going to implement this this platform. We're gonna work with containers this way, and this is where you are, the hero bringing the word of the containers. And of course, you're returning with the elixir. So my talk was about the hero's container jury. I still believe, like, when you're playing an instrument, learning new technology, all the things where you learn something new, you can apply the hero's container jury. It goes ups and downs. But in the end, you will learn something. Less is more. So think about shit in is shit out. So containers won't solve, bad coding behavior, all these things. So make sure that what you put inside is good. The Artichoke model, I think everybody needs something from those containers, and I think containers can be a communication instrument between the different. If you have silos in your company, probably not. You're all doing DevOps probably, but it's really important that everybody understands what containers can mean and bring to the business. And of course, some headspace. Sometimes it can be, this week it's this new database running containers. That week there's another technology, so make some choices there. So thank you for listening. If you want to try out Cloud 66, it's a promo, Amsterdam 2017, you get $60 of credits. Any questions? I have to put on this thing, if there are any questions? No questions? Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I have to put on, just wait a sec.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. Do you think it's a good approach to have different containers for different environments, like a specific container or a specific image for development, another for tests, to run loading tests or acceptance tests or whatever tests, and separate of the clean version for production?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think you need separation of images. So when I started using containers 3 years ago, I thought I just want to have like one big image which I can use for development, testing, and in production. That doesn't go well. So I think what you need is for development, you need an image which makes it for your developers easy to develop some code. So you basically can use container technology to spin up a development environment really easy with all the dependencies you need to develop code. When that code is finished, that code will be pushed to a Git repo somewhere, then probably your CI/CD will pick up that code, create a testing container just to test that code, and spit out an artifact. Then you can put that artifact inside a new image, which is your production image. You can use that production image, also run maybe some smoke tests against it. And then that image, which you create when you passed all the tests, then you move that to production. So basically, I think you have like 3 different Docker files, which defines the development environment, your testing environment, and also your production image. Because you want to get, you don't need all the things in a development environment for your production environment. So so I think you can see it as best practice to just remove everything and have like the smallest possible image for production. And now Docker also supports multi-stage building, so you can like have, create your artifact and then move it inside the next image and then ship that last image. I created this open source tool called Habitus, which has a build YAML where you can specify different stages, like a 2-stage or a 3-stage rocket, where you can say, okay, I just, get an image to compile my binary. I have an image to test my binary and then put inside this container, which production image, which I send to my platform. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah. I just put on the headphones and I can hear it. Yeah.
eco policies.
That's okay.
Eco policies. The second keynote this morning was about how we can all be more eco-friendly in the IT industry. As a hosting platform, there you have potentially, if you expand and go crazy, which hopefully you will, you have a huge potential impact on energy use. Do you have any policies, any thoughts around it? What Cloud 66 might do or do now about energy use in your effective data centers?
So basically we're using all major cloud providers. So we don't host our service ourselves. So we just manage the service for our customers. So if you look at it, if you have like 10,000 servers, you probably have the energy bill of a small village, right? So so what we're doing right now is, especially we're now integrating also with Kubernetes. It's going to be out this week. And what we can do is then when you have your technology stack, then you can say, don't deploy it on one server, just deploy it on the cluster of servers. So when you have like multiple technology stacks, but they're isolated by namespaces, but still using the same resources. And then you can make sure that you don't overspend your resources. So that's the nice thing with container technology and with intelligent scheduling. You can still have, good performance with less amount of resources. So we're looking into this, but it also depends how our customers are using it. A lot of customers having a lot of servers who doesn't do that much, and there's of course still, a lot of gain there if you, bring the energy footprint down. And thank you for that question.
I wanted to ask, let's say if you need to do the transition from application servers to Docker, can it be an option at the beginning to put a whole application server into a container? Can that work?
We see people just putting a whole application server inside a container and just run the systems. But in the event, you will see that it's lots of overhead. It won't perform well. So it's really good to see how you can, split that application server, make it more friendly in a container world. So some things are really easy to containerize. But if you have like for instance, a Rails application, it's still huge to run that inside a container. But it all depends how big your application server is and what you are trying to achieve. But what you see is that a lot of people putting application server inside containers, then they realize, okay, this doesn't perform well, and then they're going to split up into new technologies or moving away from their platform or just make it smaller portions so they can scale up individual parts much easier.
So it could be a first step in any way.
Yeah, it always, that's what I'm saying. 40%, 50% of our customers are still using monolith containerization, which is a good step. You just want to use that container technology, experiment with it, that's fine, but you will see that containers will shine eventually when you have smaller services, because then you can scale up only those parts you need. Probably if you have like a service and your API is hitting a lot of load, you don't want to scale up your whole application, you just want to only scale up that part of your system and make better use of resources, or maybe saying, okay, I have this cluster which is one server which is specially for high performance, high I/O. Then you put your API services there and just scale it up there. So yeah. So I'm not saying things are good or bad. I'm just saying that in the end you will see that container technology will shine more in a microservice, more composable architecture.
You need also people to get used to people in the organization that if you have an old style organization, you need them to get used to the idea.
Yeah,
so
yeah, sure.
I think it could be a first step.
That's a good first step. And also, what also works is just to show maybe a demo application where you can say, okay, we have this monolith, but we also have showing the beauty of containers in a more polyglotic architecture or microservice architecture, just as a proof of concept. Maybe you can say, okay, we can move from this architecture to this one, and we are already experimenting with this. That's possible. Yeah. Any other questions?
I'm actually,
Yeah.
I'm actually missing picture of how exactly you are maintaining containers in production, because it like says in agenda, you will show how exactly you manage these containers, and I kind of have disappointment feeling I haven't seen anything yet, I haven't heard anything.
Okay. Yeah, the thing is, when I'm showing things, managing containers in production, I'm showing our product, and I didn't want to show the product, basically. So if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it afterwards, because then I just show you, oh, this is Classic 6, we do this like this. It can be an interesting presentation. Just want to give an overview how you can use containers. So if you want to talk about that topic, we can talk about it afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. So we're at the end of this talk. Thank you for listening, and have a great afternoon. Thank you.